Hey there, my name is Ellen. Thanks for joining today. I'm going to talk about PPC and paid social strategies to help win new customers. I've been running paid campaigns for the last 5 years, and what I tried to do in this presentation was just kind of hone in on the tips that I've had the most success with, and present some high-level themes that I think could be helpful for you. In today's presentation, we're going to tackle three things. So feel free to skip around. I use these gray kind of divider marks to kind of mark sections. So if you want to fast forward to anything, please do. But we're going to start off by talking about social advertising, and I'm going to bring to life some of the tips leveraging Facebook. And then we're going to go into PPC, Google, search. And then I want to talk about budgets, what you can do if you're working on a smaller budget and what you might be able to do on a larger budget. When I put together this presentation, I really tried to think about what would be helpful for somebody who's maybe doing growth at a startup, somebody who's an owner or a founder, and I think somebody who knows their way around Ads Manager or Google Ads, has done some paid campaigns, but is ready to kind of level up their paid game, say like beginner to intermediate, definitely not the expert. So if you've been running campaigns for years, I will take no offense if you jump off this video right now. But I think if you're that founder who's been running some campaigns and wants some additional tips, definitely stick with me. Before we dive in, I have two quick slides, I think. Who's Tough? So I'm the founder at Tough, and we're a small, fully remote growth marketing team. And we're really lucky to partner with brands of all sizes, your self-funded startup, to your big established players who are spending millions of dollars on ads. And I think this diversity has put us in a position to learn really quickly to figure out, okay, when it comes to campaigns, what works and what doesn't work. And so again, I tried to leverage that experience and jam a lot of that information in today's session. Before we get in, I think probably the most important thing is really just like, when it comes to paid advertising, there is no right or wrong. I think you'll see this is the first of many terrible GIFs and images. But what I'd say is like, try to stay positive, try to experiment, try to get creative. And I think if you can really hone in on those three things, creativity, positivity, I think you'll find success when it comes to paid ads. And so as we go through this, or as you're running campaigns, it can feel deflating if you're not getting results right away, but I'd say stick with it. I think attend more sessions like this, get on Growth Mentor, chat with as many people as you can who are kind of in this paid advertising world, because you'll figure out what works, and it doesn't always happen overnight, but if you stick with it, you'll definitely have success. Cool, we're gonna dive right in with social advertising. Like I said, I'm gonna use Facebook to bring some of these tips to life, but I do think that they probably apply to all those social channels out there. Getting prepped for this presentation, really trying to think like, what in this session can I share that's going to be the most helpful. I was able to kind of dig back through like over thousands and thousands of campaigns, and I think the one nice thing about it is that there's always room for improvement. I get better with my campaigns every week, and I still have such a journey to go on when it comes to Facebook and Instagram advertising. So today, what I want to share, some of my favorite tips. I want to talk about research. I want to talk about audiences, and then I really want to just talk about the setup. This is probably like the least cool thing that I'm going to share today, but the most important. It's so easy to churn out a campaign really fast if you want, but I think we probably all know, sustainable long-term growth, real results doesn't happen by churning out thousands and thousands of ads as fast as you can. I think when I'm working on a new Facebook setup or doing a new build, it probably takes me around 4 or 5 hours. And I always allocate a full hour to just sitting down and doing research and brainstorming with my team or with our partners to figure out what's going to be unique about our message or our audience that's going to help us be successful. Some of my favorite places for inspiration, spend a lot of time on these. You have like Ad Espresso's ad gallery, a lot on there. You have Moat for display ads. But I think where I probably spend the most time would be Facebook's ad library. I'm probably on here daily, and I don't just look at competitors of the accounts that I'm running. Like, I often just look to brands that are really doing a great job. I think some that are super top of mind for me right now would be Dollar Shave Club. I'm always kind of just checking out what they're doing, what they're pushing forward. Billy's Razors, another razor company, but also doing a really great job, pretty authentic type of campaigns. Elvest, an investment platform, anytime I'm kind of in the B2B space. A newer kind of startup brand I think is doing a great job, Kanuka. It's CBD oil. And again, it's just kind of identify people that you think, or brands that you think position themselves well, and that are doing a good job when it comes to paid advertising, and start to just observe what they're doing. I think the next thing on here would be testimonials. So when I'm working on a new account, I really like to dig into the voice of the user, right? And so I think reading testimonials from your competitors, both good and bad, can be really valuable, because you start to then hear from your users or your customers exactly what they value from a product or a service in their own words. And I think that's the most critical element to getting your campaign concepts right. Even your targeting is really tapping into what your users or customers are saying. I think that's, that third bullet's really similar, but maybe less in words, but more in visuals. So when I'm working on an account, I'll go to that account as well as competitors, and or like-minded companies. It doesn't need to be competitors. It's just to, again, get a sense of that user or the customer. And I won't look at their Instagram feed. I will look at all the pictures they were tagged in. And again, it's just a way to get a little bit deeper to figure out, like, how are users and customers talking about the service or the product, not just how the brands are articulating their service or their product. It's going to get you a lot closer, I think, to the truth and how users and customers are actually talking about it. The last thing would just be customer surveys and reviews, or review your personas. I think if you have them, it's always good as a refresher, like, what is your product and why should I care? Answer those questions in your research phase and just jot all of this down to help you tap into that user and kind of what makes your brand or your offering unique. We're going to spend now probably 5 to 10 minutes here just on audiences for social. And I think I stress this so much because it doesn't matter how much money you have to spend on social. It doesn't matter if you're a startup, a local business, or have been doing campaigns forever. I think if your Facebook ad copy is great, your design, your placement, etc., it does not matter if you're showing it to an audience that doesn't care. And so, like I said, when I'm doing these new campaign builds, I'll spend about 4 hours. And an hour of that goes to brainstorming and researching and try to just get creative, try to understand that user. And then like a big chunk of that time, like 2.5, 3 hours, goes to building out audiences in Ads Manager. And so, quick list, and we'll dive deeper on all of these components, but do I have a customer file? How big is it? Can I upload it? What custom audiences can I build? What lookalikes can I make from those customer audiences, and not just 1%? How do I leverage saved audiences creatively and effectively? And then how do I think about audience size? Sometimes we see great results with narrow audiences, and sometimes we just need it to be really, really big, and there's pros and cons to both. Another great visual there, my little cow picking at his lowest hanging fruit. And again, I think I'd pair that with these custom audiences, because if you don't have a lot of budget, start where you're going to see success first. And a lot of times that is a custom audience. And so some of my go-tos, again, when I'm working on a new account, I almost just like automatically bang these guys out. I'll do email subscribers, oftentimes kind of splitting them into like my engaged email subscribers, as well as people who maybe don't open my emails or don't take a lot of action. Instagram followers, for sure. Website traffic, cart abandoners, or if it's not e-commerce, right, something like similar. Did they get to the page? I wanted them to take an action and then not do it. Why did they do that? And then lapsed customers. Using those, I'll then start with lookalikes. So it's like, I got my custom audiences. Now I'm building in my lookalikes off of those custom audiences, and I'm going to exhaust the heck out of that. I'm going to like push here as hard as I can until I feel like I've completely exhausted my lookalikes. So again, this is just a screenshot from one of the accounts we're currently working on. And it's like, you'll see a whole bunch of variety here. I know it's a little bit small, but we have like our 1%, our 2%, our 8%, our 5%. And these lookalike audiences are built off, a lot of different ad sets. We have a customer list that has lifetime value. We have visitors in the last 60 days. We have people who follow the page. We have a different customer list. And so again, really hone in on your lookalikes based on your custom audiences and start there. As you build those, you can kind of see, I said like 1%, 5%, 2%. Oftentimes I'll be working with startups or founders and I'll hear, well, we only kind of like that 1% because the quality is so clean, and anything bigger than 1% doesn't really convert. And I think there's definitely validity to that statement. I think your 1% lookalikes will typically have higher conversion rates. That being said, we've really seen that the larger lookalikes can have a lot of value, right? Sometimes there's a lower cost per acquisition because you have more people to go after. There's less creative fatigue because not the same group of people are just seeing the same ads over and over again. And then the larger volume can give you a lower CPM. And sometimes that can be really great, especially if you're running a whole bunch of retargeting campaigns. If people in that larger audience and that scale and the volume is effective, you can get those people right back with retargeting. So don't necessarily latch on to this idea that it's 1% or bust. Really exhaust those lookalike audiences. The next kind of core category, the most straightforward, are your saved audiences. So it's like custom audiences, lots of lookalikes, and then we'll build out saved audiences. And this is just incorporating the data that Facebook, leverages and gives you. And we'll start with demos. So again, like really straightforward example here. It's just like targeting the US. You could do cities, you could do states, you could do zip codes, you could add in, exclusions if you didn't want to be in certain geos. We'll put on age, we'll put on gender sometimes if it's specific to the brand. And then slowly, one by one, we'll add in additional interests or behaviors. And there's value to adding a whole bunch at the same time. It gives you some scale, but oftentimes, and you'll see in this next example here, we'll do one at a time, one interest at a time, or one behavior at a time. And this starts to just give us a good sense, especially when we're in that phase of figuring out who are our top audiences, who are our winners. It's going to help isolate those winners faster. And so again, you can kind of see here, this is for a motorcycle app. So we have a whole bunch of lookalikes, but we also have some and it's typically like lookalike, location, demos, and then like one behavior or one interest. A good example is like that Racer X Illustrated. That's just a magazine. So it was like our core audience with a magazine interest. And then we'll have, another one here, Harley Davidson, right? That was just a brand interest. And so our approach here, because we had the runway, because we had the budget, we just isolated these interests so we could start to see which ones were performing the best, which ones were lower performers. The other thing to think about when you're really honing in on your audiences is size. So there are pros and cons to both, and you have that little wheel in Facebook when you're building out your ad set to tell you, are you too narrow, are you too broad, are you just in the middle? But I think when you're testing your audiences, write down those sizes. Know how big they are. Are they 200,000 or are they 20 million, right? And I think the more narrow audiences we have seen, better quality, better conversion rates, better click-through rates, better ad scores. But we also see a lot of success with those really big audiences, like 20 million, 25 million, bigger than that, because you are getting a lower CPM and you're getting more scale. And if you feel confident in your retargeting strategy, sometimes getting more eyeballs and more clicks to the site can be really effective. So let's see, we have talked about your research, we have talked about audiences, and the last thing when it comes to Facebook and Instagram is just your setup. I think it's so exciting, especially if you're just starting running campaigns, or maybe you're starting to find some really good success, but to overcomplicate what you have in Ads Manager. And I think it's really critical and what we've seen the best success with is you just keep it simple and don't spread your already small or maybe large budget too thin so you can't get data back in a quick way or in an actionable way. And so almost all of our initial campaign builds start like this. We'll have 4 campaigns broken out by audience type. So we'll have a campaign that has a whole bunch of audiences that are saved audiences. We'll have campaigns that have a whole bunch of broad audiences. We'll have a campaign for retargeting audiences and a campaign for lookalike audiences. Within each one of those campaigns, we'll have 3 or 4 ad sets with different audiences. And within each ad set, we'll have 5 ads. It's a little bit easier if I bring it to life. and show you some screenshots from our own tough account. But here's a great example. So for this objective in general this month, we were optimizing for landing page views. That's why you see the traffic. But after that little line, you see saved, retargeting, broad, lookalikes, just how we split up our campaigns. And so, for example, following that rule of like, okay, I have my 4 campaigns, now I'm gonna have my 3 ad sets, and I'm gonna have 5 ads. If you clicked into this retargeting ad, or really any ad set, here's what you'd see. This is for retargeting. So we were retargeting an Instagram, we were retargeting an email list, and we were retargeting a 30-day site traffic. And then same idea, you can click into any single one of these ad sets and you're gonna see those ads populate. So if I went into, say, the active email list, right? You just see 4 ads. And I think for this example, we were leveraging the exact same copy. The only thing we were really curious about were like, do graphics work better? Do visuals of the team work better? And I think the one common thing I think I see across a lot of accounts is that when I get to this final ads panel within the ad sets, I'll see like 50 ads. And I think that just overcomplicates it. It's really unnecessary. Just like hone in on what you want to test, but try to keep it as simple as possible. And so like following those folder tabs at the top, just remember that setup of, okay, 4 campaigns dictated by audience type. And then I've got like 3 ad sets per campaign. And then I've got like 5 ads per ad set. And I think you'll start to see really clean data and have a better understanding of what's working and what's not, which is really important to improving each time. Because again, sometimes you get really lucky and these campaigns just explode right off the bat. But I'd say that's like maybe 5% of the time. A lot of times it's a journey. You gotta like learn really slowly over time and get better every time. And so if you keep your account set up simple, you're gonna be in a better position to do that. Awesome. Let's talk about PPC. I'll just keep moving right along. Google Ads is what we're going to kind of dig into to be representative of PPC, but just like with social advertising, again, I think a lot of these apply. It could be Bing or YouTube across the board. And I think, again, whether it's lead gen, it could be for SaaS, it could be e-commerce, it could be startup. Here are some of the things that we always like to test. They're not necessarily tips in this section, just things that we're always kind of thinking about and incorporating into our accounts to figure out, can we make these work? Because we've seen them have significant impact. So we're gonna talk about keywords, negative lists, which are kind of like keywords, as well as picking your bid strategy when it comes to Google. So the first thing we're gonna chat about is single keyword ad groups, SKAGs. I'm sure you've heard a whole bunch about these, but they're really straightforward, right? It's like 1 keyword per ad group. I think the reason we always like to incorporate SKAGs is just because it really helps our account stay healthy. And with a SKAG, the whole game is relevancy, right? So it's like, how can I make sure what that person is searching matches my bid exactly, so I'm competing in the auction, and then my ad copy matches that keyword, and so on and so on. And so here's kind of what those SKAGs look like. Here's an example actually straight from one of our accounts. So we have 3 different match types. So we have book subscription for kids at the exact level, book subscription for kids at the broad match, and we have book subscription for kids at the phrase. And oftentimes I'll give these the same bid, especially if it's a manual CPC, right? I won't dictate too heavily between, okay, I want to give my exact 25% higher than my phrase, unless you know performance differs. And that's where, like, definitely make sure when you're setting up your Google Ads account, this could be like a whole session for another day, but integrate as many accounts as you can. Get Search Console in there, get Google Analytics, get as much data as you can for post-click measurement so you can make better decisions on your keywords. I think when it comes to SKAGs, you can't do this for every single keyword unless you don't have that many, right? So it's like we work on some accounts that have 1,000 keywords, hundreds of thousand keywords. And so start with your top 5, give them all the same bid, adjust over time based on performance, like what's converting, what's not. Do they have better engagement metrics? Does an exact match? Is that person spending more time on site? Is the bounce rate lower, et cetera? And then if you see positive results, you can just kind of go down that list and check off the next group of keywords to do it to, and the next group of keywords to do it to. Because again, the whole idea with SCAGs is it takes a lot more management, it takes a lot more setup, but the play is relevancy. If you can be more relevant with your keywords, you're gonna find more success. The next thing when it comes to Google Ads, one of my favorite kind of just management techniques is I spend a lot of time in the search term report. So you can kind of follow along up at the top, but you have like your search keywords. Those are the keywords you actively select, you know, and you tell Google, hey, make sure my ad shows up for these. And then you have your negative keywords. You tell Google, please don't show my ad. I do not want to be associated with these keywords. They do not convert or they're not related to my business. And then you have your search terms. And these are related terms to the keywords you're actively bidding on. And they can be tremendously valuable in terms of bulking up your account or keeping it really clean. When I'm just launching an account and say I'm on manual CPC, I'll be in that search term report really almost every day, especially if there's a ton of volume, because there's going to be a lot of data in there in terms of like, here's what you're bidding on, but here are all these other keywords that are similar that your ads are showing up for. And so I'll go in there and I will look and I'll say, okay, what's relevant to the business? If it's relevant and it has a high click-through rate, maybe it's sent in a conversion or two, I will add it to my keywords. If it's not related to the business or it has a 0% conversion rate over an extended period of time, I will add it to my negative list. And I'll tell Google, please do not serve my ad on this search term or on this keyword because it doesn't provide my business with any value and I don't want to spend money there. And I think going and doing this exercise in the beginning quite frequently is really important. And then as your campaigns kind of level out and you get a good sense of what people are searching for, how you're bidding, where you're ranking in the auction, you don't have to do it all that often. But at first, it's one of the best places to spend time. The last thing for Google when it comes to tips, we talked about SCAGs, we talked about going through your search term report and really bulking up your negative list, but is your bid strategy. And honestly, I think this is probably the one of the most like debated topics when it comes to Google Ads, and rightfully so. There's so many ways to tackle it. I think there's like 20 different bid strategies in Google Ads, and it can be, you know, somewhat overwhelming. I think I always break it down into two categories. You have your manual bid strategies, and then you have your automated bid strategies. And it really comes down to how much control you want and how much time you have to spend in the accounts. That said, I would say almost 90% of the time, my process goes exactly like this. I will set, if it's a new account, even if I'm taking over the account, I will set all my campaigns to manual CPC because I want that control. I want to know what my device bid should be. I want to know what the schedule is. I want to be able to really control how I'm bidding. Whereas after that 30-day period, when I feel like I've had a lot of control, I've had a lot of time in the account, I've been in there daily, I typically will switch it over to a CPA or max conversion bidding and give Google a little bit more leeway to help me out. I think if you are running Google Ads for the first time, or you'd put yourself in the beginner or intermediate category, I would definitely start with your manual CPC. It's going to give you the highest level of control. It's the easiest to understand. It can deliver really great results. I think the only thing to keep in mind, and I think any type of bid strategy, none of them are like just set it on autopilot and leave it, but manual CPC more than any really takes daily attention, especially at first. And so you have to have the time and the love and the dedication to really be in there quite frequently. And I think the only other con is at first you're really not leveraging every single data point that you could with some of the automated the bid types that Google offers. But again, I think if you're just starting out, start with manual CPC. And if you see this warning, which you will if you're building out manual CPC, just ignore it. It's Google's way to kind of scare you into automating bidding, which is bullshit, and you can feel free to ignore it. I would definitely recommend starting with manual CPC. Now, like I said, 30 days of manual CPC is typically what I like to do because I'm in the account a lot, I learn a lot, I'm able to have a whole bunch of control of exactly where my money goes. If I can get some good results that way, I will definitely start testing out automated bidding so I can leverage the optimizations that Google can help with and the scale. So the way that I make this distinction is really, well, first of all, you have to be 100% confident that your conversion tracking is working. If it's not, don't even like enter the realm of automated bidding, because you have to have that set up and working accurately to get any types of results. I'll move forward with max conversions, was just basically a way of saying, hey, Google, here's my daily budget. Now go get as many conversions as possible within that daily budget. And I'll move forward with this after manual CPC if all of my conversions or sales or leads, I value them the same. And so I see this most often on like local accounts or B2B, when a form fill, no matter where it comes from, I value it at say $50, or a phone call, no matter what type of phone call, as long as it's quality, no matter what campaign it comes from, I value it the same. Now I'll move forward from manual CPC to a CPA bid strategy if I value those sales differently. So target CPA is slightly different than max conversions. I basically say, hey, Google, this is how much I value a conversion. Now go get me some of those. So I'm willing to pay X amount for these conversions. And so I see this most often in e-commerce accounts, right? Where a product line might be really drastic in terms of revenue, return on ad spend, et cetera. So for example, a product that costs $10, you might set a target CPA at like $3. Google, I'm willing to spend $3 to get a $10 sale. Whereas with 150, you might be able to say, hey, Google, I'm willing to spend $30 to get a $150 sale. So again, I think when you're thinking through bid strategies, definitely if you're newer to the game, start with manual and then maybe end into some of these automated strategies. But there's no right way to do it. And sometimes I'll switch over to a CPA bidding and it doesn't produce the results I want, and I'm gonna flip back. And so keeping a good eye on it, making sure you're on top of the data and the metrics is really the only way to make sure you're kind of sitting in the right space. The last thing we're gonna tackle today, and if you're still with me, thanks for hanging on, is budgets. I think in the perfect world, we have our little Rihanna over here. We have, when it comes to paid advertising, I think no matter what size you are, you're just starting out, it's like we have 10,000 a month over the course of 6 months. We're gonna start with some small tests. We're gonna figure out what's working. We're gonna get creative and we're gonna scale up what works. I think what I see 95% of the time, the reality is more, I have 2,000 per month and I need to think about how on earth do I allocate per channel? Do I put it on Google? Do I put it on Facebook? How do I run tests with a smaller budget? And what about creative? And don't get me wrong, I think, especially being a business owner myself, $2,000 isn't nothing, but it is a little, when it comes to paid advertising, having enough spend to get the data that you need to make the right decisions is important, but there's ways that you can do it. So if you have a smaller budget and you're trying to think about, okay, how do I allocate per channel? This is when I always go back to our little Pikachu dude, right? That research phase. And that's why I started there, is it's going to help you think about some of these big, really important questions. So where are your users and customers, and where are they more likely to convert? I think if you have a product or a service or a solution or a software that has a lot of search volume already, people have a big problem or they have a big need. Good example would be like an accounting software, right? Start with Google. It's gonna be more expensive, but the intent is a lot higher. If you don't have a lot of search volume, or nobody's heard of the brand and you don't necessarily have, and the keywords in your industry cost $25, start with social, put more money there, but make sure you are doing retargeting and have that activated, because again, Facebook is a lot different than Google. People aren't actively searching, right, for a problem or a solution to their problem. They're just like scrolling on Instagram, looking at what their friends did last weekend. And so you have to actively get them out of that environment and over to your website, and they're much more likely to convert, although the traffic is still pretty high quality. The next thing you want to think about is, okay, how do you learn with a small budget? How do you get data back that's going to help you actually take actions and scale up what's working? And so I'll always kind of think about two things. Okay, how do I get data back fast in a short amount of time? And then how do I find my audiences? There's a reason in today's session we spent like 10 minutes on custom audiences, on lookalikes, on saved, on retargeting, because it really, really matters to getting the right results on paid advertising. So what I want to talk through really quickly is a flow that I've found success with. Again, it's kind of hacky, but it's worked for now. So when I have smaller budgets, what I like to do is I will build a batch of campaigns with that simplified setup that we talked about, those 4 campaigns, 3 ad sets, 5 ads, and I will optimize. So I'm in Ads Manager, you have kind of those sections. What do you want to optimize for? Is it clicks? Is it app installs? Is it likes? Is it conversions? I will optimize. I'll take $500 over the course of a week, usually lifetime budget, and I will optimize for landing page views. I will test a whole bunch of different audiences during that week time to isolate some winners, like that top 30% of people who have high click-through rate, a longer time on site, the bounce rate is really low. So I can start to get a sense of who is my audience on Facebook. The reason I start with landing page views is because you're going to get data a lot faster and you're going to get a lot more clicks than you would optimizing for something a little bit further in the funnel, like a sale or a lead or a demo request. So I took $500, I ran campaigns for a week, and I found my top 30% of audiences. I will then completely rebuild the campaigns, and I will optimize for about 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks. It really just depends on the data. I'll take like 750, and I will only take my top 30% of audiences from wave 1. And I will optimize for one step further in the funnel. So I'm not quite going for this like full on sale or lead, but I'm saying, okay, I have my best audiences and I'm going to get them to put something into a cart or get to that page that has the free demo request or get them one step further than just the home page. And during this phase, I'm really just thinking about, okay, I know my audiences. What is my hook? What is getting somebody to stick on the site and almost take the action that I want them to do? And I'll then isolate those and kind of call those like just the greatest hits. Those are my top ads. That's my copy. That's my hook. So wave 1, I have my audience winners. Wave 2, I have my hook. Now I will rebuild them again, right? A lot of hands-on work. I will rebuild these campaigns and I will go for it. I will optimize for that sale. I'll optimize for that lead, whatever that action I want them to take. I'm going to say, let's do it. And instead of lifetime budgets, I will give a daily campaign budget with a cost cap. I will make it an ongoing campaign and I will see, okay, I have my best audiences. I have my best message. Can I get them to take that action I care about? It's definitely not perfect. This is such a rush timeline, but I have done it on accounts and it has worked. So if you are a startup with not a lot of money, this could be a really interesting place for you to start. Last but not least, images. So I'd say, again, like we talked about the audiences for so long because that matters the most. And I think the coolest trend we're seeing with images is that they do not need to be overproduced. You do not need to spend thousands of dollars on getting ad creative developed. Leverage what you already have. Tap into your users, tap into your existing creative. Some of these are campaigns that Tough has run. Some of them are not. Dollar Shave Club. But what you can see is like this trend is like these are not overproduced, right? Like for the book club, she could be your niece. For the guy opening the door, that could be your neighbor. Like none of these are super, I think the one of the beer was taken with an iPhone. And so you don't want them to look blurry and crappy, like they need to be high quality in that sense, but leverage what you already have. Users are so tired of seeing these overproduced ads. Try to blend in a little bit and don't stress out if you don't have a whole bunch of new creative because you can make a drastic impact just leveraging the stuff you already have. That's it. If you're still with me, thanks for following along on this journey. I think kind of bringing it full circle, it's like stay positive, stay creative, always experiment, and you're going to find success. I think if you loved everything today, give Tough a shout on Twitter. If you hated it, you can also give us a shout on Twitter. If you have questions, if you have ideas, let's continue this conversation. I think that's what Growth Mentor is about, is having this conversation as growth marketers, helping us all get better. And so again, thanks so much for tuning in and I really appreciate it. Excited to see what we can do out there.